about the pandemic of pension woes that plague this country. We just recently saw Detroit, which went from 40 years ago, the top of the economic heap in this country, to bankruptcy. Chicago's looking at a $1 billion shortfall over the next year. California
you're being generous
is even worse than that. Where are we going with these municipalities? Are we going to bail them all out? Are we going to let the country declare bankruptcy? We have $70 trillion at least.
You know, part of that was the fault of the corporations too. And they didn't want any strikes. It was the steel workers, it was the United Auto Workers, the big corporations. They were making money hand over fist. They knew that a 1 week strike would cost them a year's profits. So they went along with it and they said, well, you know, we can pass it on. You got to look back at 50, 60 years ago when inflation became an absolute everyday occurrence in this country. So, and raising prices was no problem because demand was there for the goods that were being manufactured or being imported and brought in. And by the way, speaking of imports, imports is what broke the inflationary spiral in this country. Once we not only imported goods from China, from Japan, from all other Southeast Asian countries, from all over the world, suddenly we found that we were competing with our production here in this country. And a lot of that production had very high labor costs, and a lot of those high labor costs were based on the fact that there were pensions and fringe benefits that were not going to come due for another 15, 20, or 30 years. Well, now
so
the chickens are coming. The chickens are coming home to roost right now. That's what's happening. Detroit is the most horrible example of that situation.
And we've got this all over the country and all over the world.
It started here in California. You know, San Bernardino. You had what, 4 or 5 cities in California that have gone bankrupt.
But San Bernardino, on the scale of Detroit, is not even
I know,
close.
but I mean, that's where it got started. Whenever you take that attitude, well, let's not worry about it now. Let's put it on the back burner as far as so. This country owes $60–70 trillion
at least.
Okay, but the point
in obligations.
But the attitude today is it's what I call a European attitude. You know, the Europeans actually have 100-year bonds because they know they're not going to have to be there when time comes for collection. I'm not kidding you. That's the way the Europeans think. Kick can down the road is the way the Europeans do business. Well, now they're finding out Germany can't pay all the bills. That's basically what it boils down to.
But we were at the top of this segment, we talked about the United Kingdom, which surprises me a little bit.
I think that's a little bit of an exaggeration. I know, I've seen the same news. You know, things were getting very bad. They were in recession. They've gone from being in recession to getting back to even. That's basically what it is. England has not...
Well, I guess when you're on the bottom of the pool and when you can actually see the sun...
Look, the English Empire, you go back to the beginning of the First War, the sun never set on the British Empire. England controlled 25% of the world between their colonies on every continent. Every continent, they had a position. And they were getting natural resources for nothing from places like India and converting them into the factories in England itself. And that's why the Industrial Revolution took place in the United Kingdom.
And do you know what the most popular boy's name is right now in the United Kingdom?
Mohammed. Absolutely.
Mohammed. So that tells you where the UK has gone.
I'm well aware of that. That's well, they've opened the door, and again, because Pakistan, India were part of the British Empire all the way up to the beginning of the Second War.
So let me ask you a question. If we owe in debt obligations into the tens and tens and tens, maybe $100 trillion, do we just one day just wipe it out and just start with a new slate? How does this end?
No, I think that, well, first of all, that gets into the fact that right now we're lucky. In fact, there's no sign of any inflation. The inflation on a year-to-year basis right now is less than 1.5% because we have a surplus of labor, we have a surplus of raw materials and natural resources, and we have a tremendous amount of money stuck away to pay for these things. You're talking about long-term debt, which is being passed on to our children and our grandchildren. But right now, Look, if we allowed this blessing that has been placed on the country of natural resources, coal, oil, natural gas, that could solve most of the problems. It really could, because I've checked it out financially, mathematically. I told you about the shale here in California. The Monterey Shale will generate, it's unbelievable, $50 billion in revenues in the next few years if we're allowed to start working on it right now.
But you're never going to overcome the boogeyman called global warming. No matter what the facts say, no matter what the data says, no matter how many emails were jerry-rigged and changed and deleted no matter what they do, you're never going to get around that.
Yes, if you elect a new government that looks realistically, you see. Remember, Obamacare was pushed through by Obama because no other president ever had come up with universal health care in this country. He wanted that as part of his legacy, that he was the one, this poor person came up from nowhere, and he was the one to push through that. Clinton couldn't do it, Roosevelt couldn't do it, Bush couldn't do it. Nobody could push through any kind of a health care program. But you know, when this thing is all said and done, when this nightmare is over, if it ever is, there'll be more people without health care than there have been if we left the whole thing alone.
Absolutely, and the costs are not going down. No, it's not the affordable health care.
Why do you think everybody's against it?
And you know, more and more every day are against it. Yeah. Even Democrats that voted and pushed and lobbied for this thing are now nervous that it's not going to work out well.
Oh, especially those that are trying to run for re-election.
And we'll talk about that soon. We need to take a brief time out. Our global outlook, political insider, and history segments are all straight ahead. For more information about the show, to email us with comments, or if you missed a segment, just log on to our website, theworldreport.org. Today's great quote comes from Tyler Durden. On a long enough timeline, the survival rate for everyone, even Maury, drops to 0. We'll be right back.